Howdy. Welcome to Epic Voyages. I'm Jim Mars, your permanent floating, temporary, sometimes stand-in host. And we're here tonight. We're going to have a really neat program tonight because with me tonight is Terral Croft. Terrell, I was going to say a researcher into massive objects. And, of course, what we're talking about, and I think everybody's pretty much up on the ideas of Planet X, Nibiru, several names that they have for it, Wormwood. But, Terrell, tell me, how would you describe yourself and give us just a brief synopsis of your background?
Okay. I describe myself as a Bible scholar. I worked on scriptures. I write Bible commentary. That's what I would love to be doing right now. But on the 5th anniversary of 9/11, then I watched the documentary and my heart just went out. And I did that for 5 years. I researched that, wrote 2 books. And then I was doing the back to my Bible work, and then this Elenin came out, Elenin Comet. And Elenin backwards is 9/11. This thing had a perihelion of 9/11. And I could see the lettered agencies all over this thing with their PSYOP, and I ran after it. I joined astronomy group after astronomy group and learned everything I could. And now I've been on the case for a year, and I'm having deja vu, by the way, because things are happening this year just like last year. And
so
last year I was able...
It's cycling around, right?
Right. By February the 20th, which is today, this was a golden day last year in my timeline, then I was able to project that we were going to have an Earth axis shift, and that it was going to be on March the 15th, and I was off by 4 days. But this year, we've made a new projection, and I see the pattern much better now. I kind of see what's happening. I'm working with 3 groups of astronomers, and we're going to have an Earth axis shift this time on March the 22nd at 4:58:34 UTC. We're going to hit the speed bump. We're going to cross between this heavy mass object and the sun, and there's a gravity trough there. We're going to hit it, and it's going to cause the Earth axis to shift 5 inches. Aquifers around the world are going to shift, and we're going to have a 9+ magnitude event, one of the top 10 earthquakes in Earth recorded history on that day. And I believe it's going to happen down in the Christchurch area because of the way the Earth is turned. That's what we project is going to happen.
That would be in New Zealand, right?
Right, down in that area. It appears that they're around the Ring of Fire. That's where we're having most of the activity. See the Christchurch and the Japan. That's on the 188-day cycle, by the way. The Japan event happened 47 minutes and 50 seconds earlier in the day than Chile. And so we expect this one's going to be the same way. We think it's going to happen 47 minutes and 50 seconds earlier in the day on March the 22nd. So that's why we say it'll be 4:58:34 UTC.
What'd that be in, say, Central Time?
Okay, well, we are what? Are we earlier? Then we earlier or later?
What are you talking about?
I used to live in London, so I should know that.
Well, are we talking about like New Zealand time?
No, UTC. That'll be London time. 4:58.
Time.
Right, but
okay.
all the events are going to be recorded in UTC, so that's when it's going to. When it happens, it'll come out with that time on it.
Okay, right now.
No matter what time it is on the world.
Right now, it's 2:07 a.m. in London, so you're saying it's going to be 4:50 something a.m.
Right.
Okay.
4:58:34 UTC time.
Okay. So let's see. Oh, this gets into math. That leaves me out. But anyway, though. But that
we're going to be behind them.
We're going to be behind. So we'll wake up and hear the news, right?
That's right. And that's the time I believe is going to be on there. If it doesn't happen, that's the most probable. If it doesn't happen, it means there's something, there's a malfunction in my calculation or in its orbit. But then I'm going to take that data. I'm going to know more about what's going to happen. I'm on the case. I'm a good timekeeper. If you follow my 9/11 work, then the 100-point timeline. Some of those events are separated by only 100th of a second. I just love doing timelines and things and figuring things out and digging in there and figuring out what it is. And that's when I believe it's going to happen.
You mentioned that you're working with some astronomers. How come they haven't come forward and given the same predictions as you?
Amateurs, some of them have access to their own observatories with scopes that weigh tons. People are being attacked, and people's offices are being invaded by haters, and I don't know if they're government shills or what they are, but we realized since the last cycle that we have to work covertly, kind of. So they're working with me, but I can't give their names or anything like that, or they'll be very upset with me and not working with me anymore.
I understand. I also understand if you're a mainstream astronomer and you're probably working with money either paid by the government or through foundations to the school that you work for, and you're under pretty tight control, right?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, we have astronomers coming in trying to debunk I have no time for debunkers. What I'm looking for is a researcher that wants to explain the symptoms that we're looking at. So whenever we had these Earth axis shifts, that we were passing, the Earth passed between the Sun and the Leo constellation. So when Saturn passed in front of the Leo constellation, then it developed its current superstorm. It also developed an extra ring. And the last time that it developed a superstorm was 30 years ago when it passed in front of the Leo constellation. See, these are common patterns of what we're seeing in the evidence, and it's not just Saturn that's being affected; all the planets are being affected. By
what about Jupiter's core? Is there something going on with that?
Jupiter's core is liquefying, and the reason I believe is because of the heavy mass object. Remember that the Earth and the Sun are connected together by magnetic portal connection. It connects and disconnects on 8-minute cycles, and this star that's coming in here is also connected a magnetic portal connection to our planet. So if the Earth is warming, if the ice sheets are melting because of global warming, then you would think it would be the same in the north and the south, wouldn't you? But
right.
the southern ice sheets are not melting, but the northern are being depleted. Now, why is that? The answer is that the largest magnetite deposits in the planet are under the North Pole, and the magnetic portal connection from this thing is sending magnetism, extra magnetism into our planet that's being transferred into heat energy, and it's the metals inside of the Earth that's causing that heat to be transferred to the core, and it's more into the north than the south. So then that leads to a lot of melt, which speeds up the ocean conveyor, but then it leads to not enough melt, which is what we're getting now, and that means the ocean conveyor is broken, which it is. The Gulf of Mexico was cut off in 2010, and now you see the severe winter they're having over in Europe because they do not have the benefit of the Gulf Stream. It's still flowing, but it's moving way more slowly, and it's colder by the time it gets there. And also because of magnetic pole migration. So the magnetic pole is migrating over into Siberia. What happens is our weather circulates not the geological pole, but the magnetic North Pole. And as that North Pole continues to move farther into Siberia, then the jet stream is going to continue to sag deeper into Europe, and it's going to ride higher above Americas. So we have the jet stream. You realize that the cold air is trapped north of that jet. That's what's happening, is that the Americas are being spared a harsh winter while Europe is getting, and Asia is getting a terrible winter.
Right, they're getting frozen over. Let me point out to the listeners that this shifting of the magnetic North Pole, this is not one of Terrell's theories. This is fact. I mean, this has been reported on even in the mainstream media. We know now that it's somewhere in Siberia and could keep on moving. But Terrell, let me ask you this. Is it possible that the heating up in the core of the Earth could be responsible for basically, I guess, outgassing, which could account for the strange reports of these almost trumpet-like sounds being heard around the world?
A percentage of them are caused by that. It's the deep caverns that are adjacent to the magma domes. Then you get a heating up, and then the moisture content. It's like steam, and air. The hot air displaces more area, and so the air is trying to escape, and it's outgassing, just like you're saying. But the caverns are individuals. They have different chambers, and they go thinner and thicker. And whenever you get an area right, and so you get a trumpeting effect that goes through there. But that only explains a percentage. Also, this thing that's coming in here is a gigantic. Well, it's a mini solar system, and it has a lot of electrons. And remember that this thing is the hub is a black dwarf star. That's my leading hypothesis, which means that it was a white and then a brown and now it's a black. And back when it formed, then it had the large protons and neutrons on the outside, and then it shed them. Now we're down to the the subatomic particles, the electrons, and what is being released as photons. Remember that NASA came out with a warning 2010 that said that Earth in our solar system is orbiting into a photon belt. And they gave this big old warning saying that there were going to be extra comets and this and that. Well, I think that's all bull. What's being released by this inbound object is the subatomic particles. The flux numbers are all high. The reason is because the saturation level is getting higher as this thing gets closer. It's pushing walls of subatomic particles. And that's what's the sun right now is in the thralls of a second heliosphere. That's the atmosphere of this inbound heavy mass object, and it has an outer reach apparently of about 8 AU, and 1 AU is an astronomical unit. That's about 93 million miles, and it has an inner reach of about 5 AU. So now, if the projections are correct, then this thing is getting between 3 and 2 AU away, and the sun is responding to it. So now that the sun is actually on the surface of the sun, now we're seeing tornadoes that are forming. The sun is acting very strange. It's quieter than it should be, heading towards the solar maximum, and it is showing signs of having these superstorms on it. That could be another sign that we're looking at a heavy mass object coming in here, another symptom, if you will.
Right. Yeah, and there's no question that the sun activity has been quite erratic, and this is certainly could be one of the explanations. Well, let me ask you. You've called it a star, and then you hedge it by saying heavy mass object. Is this like a dead star, a dwarf star? Is this an actual sun? Are there planets around it? Is this a system, or is it one big planet the size of Jupiter or something? Can you be more specific?
Yes. Well, we try not to give it so many characteristics, attributes. Because it brings a lot of pain from other people because you can't prove it yet. So it's a hypothesis. The leading hypothesis says this thing's a black dwarf. And that's the reason that we can't see it. The first brown dwarf was discovered officially in 1995 because they are very cold and they're very difficult to see. And nobody's ever seen a black dwarf before. They're theoretical like black holes. But for me, I've been tracking this thing for a year now. To me, the black dwarf hypothesis is the leader by far. We do have people that have observed it. At some times you can see this thing kind of clearly when we're at outside orbit position and we've blocked orbit with it, like last year, at May of last year, we were able to visualize. And this thing apparently has 7 orbitals. It has a red one. It has multiple white ones and blue ones. So I think you're familiar with having one source, and that's unverified. That's what I'm dealing with. Is just not enough sources to be able to verify everything. So right. Yes, I have people that seen it. They've described it to me. During one of my radio shows for 15 minutes, he described it. But I don't have other people that can do that. Right now, so the problem is when you get light shining on the wrong side of this event horizon, instead of being like a planet, it's a star. Okay, you have to realize that if it was a planet made of regular molecules, we'd be able to see it even outside of Pluto's orbit. But if it's a star, the scientists are saying that there's planets out there that orbit nothing, that they're just out there. But in reality, there are different classifications of star they have not discovered yet because they don't have the instrumentation to see them. Right. That's what we're dealing with here is an unclassified object that's coming in here. And at times it can be seen, but when you have light shining, like Mars is in the wrong place right now, when it's shining light in the wrong side of my gravity well, and it makes the thing become opaque, so it can't be seen. And Mars is going to be there till June, which is kind of upsetting to me, but what are you going to do about it?
Yep. I have trouble with Mars myself. Well, let me ask you this. I know, and I've done my research, and I know that I have in my file stories from the 1980s even, where mainstream media was talking about scientists who were saying, yes, we've discovered a 10th planet out there. This, of course, was at a time before they downgraded poor old Pluto, which at one time had been a planet, and now he's just Mickey Mouse's dog, I guess.
A dwarf planet.
And he's a dwarf planet. So now, actually, I guess, so now they were talking about a 10th planet, so now I guess we'd be talking about a 9th planet, except you're saying it's not just a planet, it's a star system or a black dwarf. Well, Terrell, tell me, how can you, and through you, us, how can we know that this thing's really out there, particularly when there seems to be a media lid on this story? They laugh it off, and the JPL and the NASA, they're just going, no, nothing there, folks. How do
We're
we know?
tracking it.
How do we know something's going on there?
We're tracking it by the effects that it has on the Earth and on the other planets, on the sun, and on our government. That's why on the regular radio shows that I do on this topic on New Revolution Radio every Friday night, 8 o'clock, then that's what we're doing. Then we are describing what's going on with the effects, and we got geopolitical analysts there. Andrew Russ is on our team, and he's an attorney, and he's following the government and what they're doing. So we can tell by their footsteps, but by their more than 30 programs they have running, and they're converging, that they're preparing for an event too, and it appears that it's going to be happening this summer. And then we're watching the sun, like you say, it's acting abnormally. And we have the Earth axis shifts that are happening on the 188-day cycle. And then we have the magnetic pole migration, the dead animals. See, the reason I can't, there's more than one theory. You should realize there's more than one theory. The galactic rift, the galactic plane hypothesis, that we're getting near the galactic plane, and that's causing this. But see, that's on a 26,000-year cycle. So I would expect the symptoms to be gradual, very, very, very gradual, where the events that's happening here is more severe. And the only way that I can get the magnetic effect to cause the magnetic pole migration, the animals to die because of the bending lines of the magnetosphere, is to introduce another magnet. And that other magnet is connected to our heavy mass object. You see what I mean? So the only way, when I'm looking at the big picture and gathering all the data, I want the answer that's causing what's causing all the symptoms. Now, it's possible we could have 2 or 3 different things going on, rather than just a heavy mass object. It's possible that there's a combination of things happening, which means I need to broaden my hypothesis a little bit. But then I've got the astronomers that have visualized. So that's telling me that it's there. And on March 22nd, at that time, I believe that we're going to have another sign from heaven that there is something going on here and that we're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on March 22nd, you could see something similar to the Japan earthquake last March.
That's right. There's going to be an event very similar to that. If it happens onshore, then of course we won't have the tsunami. And hopefully there's no nuclear power plants involved. But if it happens offshore, which in the Pacific is a good likelihood that it will happen offshore, we could be looking at tsunamis again, like the Japan event.
Well, if this happened in the Christchurch area, then it's going to mostly affect eastern Australia and then the islands in the South Pacific. And how far north can you expect it? Are we going to get tsunamis in Mexico or Southern or California?
There's too many variables. Very, very difficult to predict. Because that area is moving so much, then there's not a lot of pressure built up. You get what's like a caterpillar effect and a building up of pressure when things don't move. But this area's been so active that we don't expect to be a gigantic event. Now, it's possible when you go on a diagonal over there to California, between California and Alaska, gigantic plate over there that has not moved. And if that thing moves, we could be looking at a 10 magnitude event and gigantic tsunamis affecting everybody on the Pacific coast, all the way around the Ring of Fire in that situation. But what I expect is that that's not going to move until later in the timeline. When the big giant thing gets closer to the Earth and starts really shaking us, I'm expecting that it's going to move later in the timeline, in unison with the caldera that's up there. Out west, we have lots of calderas out there. I'm expecting them to continue to bulge, which they are. There's looking at all kinds of reports of sinkholes everywhere around the planet. This is like an extinction level event movie, like 2012, but it's just happening in slow motion. Like Deep Impact. This is what's going on over the sinkholes over. They had a 6.9 earthquake over in the Philippines, and now they've got their sinkholes that's going along with that. The Aleutian Islands, the Canaga volcano, that's awake. It's eruption, first time in 17 years. Then you've got the massive explosive eruption seen at Japan's over at the Sakurajima volcano. A lot of places. You're seeing calderas around the world that are like Jiffy Pop popcorn, bubbling up, blowing up, and you're seeing the pressure being released by volcanoes that are coming awake that have not. Here's one that the Mount Fuji volcano in Japan. It hasn't awakened in 300 years, but now it's coming awake, and we're seeing that same pattern all around the planet. Is the Earth core is getting hotter, and that pressure got to go somewhere.
That's right. And of course, the Ring of Fire, which is the volcanic ring all the way around the Pacific, Asia, and then on the west coast of America and South America, it's just been incredibly active over the past year, hasn't it?
Yes, I think that's going to continue to increase on the uptick. Last year at this time, we had 3s, 4s, and 5s. Every now and then you got a 6. Now you get in 4s, 5s, and 6s, and every now and then you get a 7. I'm expecting that uptick to continue right on through. Our giant event, March 22nd, and then into the summer, I think we're going to see the 5s, 6s, and 7s becoming common, and then the 8 coming every now and then. I'm expecting that pattern to continue to be on the uptick.
Well, I understand that there's many chief executive officers of corporations who suddenly are taking vacation about now or preparing to. And I think I noticed that Michelle Obama, President Obama's wife, is off on one of her, I think about her 14th or 15th vacation. And interestingly enough, to Colorado, which of course is where they have, by rumor, a lot of the big underground bases and enclaves. Do you know anything about that? Are people in the know starting to pack their bags?
They were doing that last year at this time. If you look at the story from the Rothschilds,
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
They all went
to Colorado, didn't they?
A lot of them went to India too. When you look at the maps of the future, the Scallion maps, then you see India fares about the best of everybody, and they have a lot of deep underground bunkers there, and the elites. That's a place that they go. Also, underneath the airport out there in Colorado, that's what you're talking about, the underground city they have out there.
Yeah, the Denver International.
But I still think this is practice for later in the summer. The elite, they don't really know what's going to happen with this March 22nd event. If everybody wakes up, you have to realize that you're not racing the heavy mass object. What you're racing is everybody else waking up. Because if everybody wakes up right now, if everybody in the world was listening to me and everybody believed me, they would run down to Walmart and empty the store. Then how are you going to prepare? See, right now, if you can get yourself in the know, you identify your threats, create your contingencies, and you execute them on time, just like the military. Mm-hmm. Okay? As long as you don't wait too long, because when the gas cards don't work, the most likely scenario for lockdown, that's what we're looking at, is you're looking at a lockdown that's going to happen. The most likely scenario is the power grid goes down, just like out southwest last cycle, 10 million people affected. Brazil, no, not Brazil, Chile. Power grid went down, 12 million people affected. Well, just imagine if the power doesn't come back on. What happens after 72 hours and what you're going to do. So people need to identify these threats and then plan accordingly and be ready for something. That's what the elites are doing, is they're debugging their programs because they don't know what's going to happen March 22nd, if the whole world's going to wake up or not. So they need to go to their safe zones and be ready just in case. And then whenever the whole world doesn't wake up because the world's asleep, then they can go about their business until summer. So look for them to be doing their prep for this event. Your big event is going to be March 22nd, and you're probably going to have a couple of X-class flares before and a couple of X-class flares afterwards that's going to test the power grids. And that's another reason that they're going to be hidden away, just in case. And remember, if there's 10% chance of the need for this contingency, if there's a 10% chance, then they act on it. Well, that's what the elite are doing. And then after the X-class flare